So our value proposition is this SAGA. It's a soluble antigen array therapy that we've developed for the treatment of multiple sclerosis. And within this value proposition, what we looked at was the different elements of this therapy that gives us some benefit over the current treatment, which is reducing the side effects, increasing the extended efficacy. So many times these therapeutics become less and less effective over time, as well as prolonging your treatment efficacy and then reducing your dosing schedule. Some of them are IV infusions, which obviously take a long amount of time where you have to sit, or you have to take multiple doses during the day or the week. So with these value propositions, looking at our customer, what we found is, I don't know if you'll be able to read this, but really this is the percentage of people that are experiencing relapsing, remitting multiple sclerosis in the country. In the United States, it's about 85% of the 400,000 people that have multiple sclerosis. But while this is kind of our endpoint customer, really what we need to look at is the relationships that we have of how we can get there. And so we're not going to be able to develop a sales force, and we're not going to be able to talk directly to doctors. What we would need is to have some kind of partnership with Big Pharma. And so that's kind of these channels of, Big Pharma is really, it would be a licensing or merger acquisition that we would go through, and then they can actually talk to the doctors and pharmacies and get to the patients. So for the company ourselves, our key resources that we can develop to date are really the personal, so that's your lab space and the employees and the technology that we have with that, as well as our IP, and then kind of, I tried to include some of this financial incentives that would be, as far as stock options or whatnot for your employees. But as a smaller starting biotech, there are many key partnerships that we would need to go, and that's going to be those contract lab organizations that can complete your animal toxicity studies and complete your IND packet formation and complete all the work and your data maintenance. I mean, you create massive amounts of data, and someone has to be able to organize it or keep it organized. And this is just kind of building towards your first step, which is this, this one yellow over here. I guess there's no laser pointer, but it's the yellow one that is getting to the IND, because in pharmaceuticals, as you all know, the IND is kind of how you can actually validate what you have is real and get into humans. And so the cost structure focuses on getting everything towards that, whether it's your people, your labs, all your tox studies and whatnot. And to do that, kind of these key activities that we developed was design, getting the treatment therapeutic developed, characterized, getting a nice data packet around that, completing all your animal studies, developing your regulatory packet, getting all your long-term storage and all the necessary things that the FDA wants so you can get into humans, so that you can get to this point of revenue stream, which is hopefully some licensing deal with Big Pharma, where you can get royalties and milestone payment. And then I kind of put off to the side in those greens, that's kind of the funding that we can use to try and get there, whether it's private sector grants, say from the Multiple Sclerosis Foundation, there's the Myelin Repair Foundation, there's a lot of private entities that like to give money to try and solve these diseases for their patients, or SBIR grants or angel money on these smaller terms. Because, as we try and do these projections, we say, oh, well, we need like $5 million to get to IND. Well, how do you go out and get $5 million? I haven't met anyone on the street that wants to give me $5 million, so if you do, please meet me after the talk. But then it gets more and more complicated as you get past just trying to get to humans. And so as I try to continue building this, really the next thing is, if there's a next there, these are all the added post-it notes that I came up with trying to go through phase 1, and then trying to go through phase 2 as well. And then you just add these activities of setting up, how do you set up clinical sites, how do you set up this, and how can you do it on your own, or how can you do it with a partnership with Big Pharma. So that's kind of my presentation. I hope that was 5 minutes or less. I'll take questions and critiques.
Yeah, I'll start. Very nice presentation, thank you, and pretty crisp. And I guess one of the questions I would ask is, as you're thinking about clinical trials in particular, which always is sort of the goal when you think about this, you've got 4 different sort of endpoints or differentiators that you really want to get to. So the cost associated to that, how are you in fact going to go after one of those in particular, or how are you really thinking about the clinical trial design strategy?
Yeah, see, that is one of the ones where, kind of as Steve was talking about, beating the pavement and talking to some of these customers, going to the customers that are in the space that have therapies out there and saying, like, okay, how can we develop our therapy so you want to put it into your pipeline? how can we, there's really only 2 biotherapeutics for multiple sclerosis, and so really saying, how is it that we need to design our studies to interest you? Oh, sorry, I thought I was pretty loud just in general. And those are questions that we would need to ask, and hopefully as the funding, because, doing a clinical trial is a lot of money. And so if we have enough and we have exciting enough data that we can get someone, say venture capital, interested, we would hope that the people that we bring aboard would have expertise enough to guide it as well.
Thank you.
Yeah, let me just ask a question. So you have a couple of revenue streams there, but you don't seem to have a customer segment who's paying for those particular revenue streams. Is that?
Yeah, this is the one problem that I kind of had with this model in trying to conceptualize all this. And the same thing, we've worked with the business department or business school developing business plans for this company. The business models tend to break down for the pharmaceutical companies trying to generate, okay, what is our profits and what is our revenue stream based on our royalties and our licensing agreement. If we say, well, we have 85% of the population, so we have 320,000 people with relapsing remitting. We want to gain 15% of the marketplace over 5 years after launch, and we have an 8% royalty stream, and that's going to be $2.7 billion a year. So, we have $270 million of cash. It doesn't really work like that. And so when I tried to put the numbers in the model as far as the generator, it just started getting really weird things. And I was like, oh, look, with my current cost structure, even though I'm spending $40 million on clinical trials to get through phase 2, I still have $350 million in the bank. And so I took those out.
No, the reason why I'm asking is, before the numbers, there's something really simple, right? People or companies pay if you're solving some kind of pain for them or you're creating some kind of gain. So saying for who are you solving a pain? For which company, for which patient, and for who are you creating a gain is a very basic and important start. And that's what you're going to be testing outside of the building. If those customers are not there, you're saying, well, I don't need to talk to those guys, right?
I guess maybe that's what I was trying to cover with the private sector and SBIR grants. So, the SBIR, you can pitch the National Institute of Health, and the private sector would be, the MS Society or other such organizations. So maybe I could move them up into or straddle the line of customer segment and revenue stream. As they would feed cash in to hopefully advance the idea.
One of the things that is the most challenging about life science and what we've found in using the canvas is just it gets so complex so fast. And you have a bunch of moving parts. And thinking about the customer segments, oftentimes you have to choose 1 or 2 players that you're trying to benefit. And I think when I think about what you just presented, it's how do you avoid the decelerants that are that are so challenging in pharmaceutical design and testing, and how do you accelerate your data, and what foundation. The good thing about MS is you've got some really strong foundations, and they've done some really great things in terms of pre-collecting samples so that you could test your therapies on existing samples with confirmed patients. You wouldn't have to enroll in a clinical study. Have you kind of thought through that?
Yeah, we're definitely looking at trying to, it's kind of the flip side of this, we can see if we can use the same kind of type of therapy for a diagnostic tool. The biggest thing with MS is we have this big data bank, but from the time to diagnosis, from the time of onset is 9 years usually, because a lot of the initial symptoms are similar to other diseases such as diabetes or just a pinched nerve from it. And so how can we also leverage the technology to help in that space might be another revenue stream that we've thought of. And then another thing, while there's a growing bank of kind of samples to use is the public perception, and trying to how can you increase the public perception of willingness to donate into that space, and then to influence where the company goes. I think that's an excellent point.
Well, and one of the keys is subsegmenting the disease, right? Subsegmenting based on the natural history of that disease. And then you'll come to some insights for who you can attack based on, if you can diagnose earlier, or are you limited to only treating later, or with particular comorbidities.